So hey guys, welcome back to Ponderings from Palm Coast. So today is a few days after some tragedy that has happened in America. I am a practicing podcaster with a liberal view. I don't hide behind a fake name. I don't have pseudonyms. I bring my guests in here to provide information. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't. That is good. That is welcome. That is the dialogue that society needs. One of my earliest podcasts, I talked about critical thinking and the challenges of how in school today it's lost on the young people. To ascertain, to hear a message, research it, look at it. I mean, you've got the Encyclopedia Britannica is in everyone's pocket to verify and believe and understand and make your own mind. So with that, I'm going to move to a very special guest I have today, Tom Townsend. And Tom has been in the political world for a long time. And Tom, why don't you give us a little background of, you?
Sure, Mark. Well, thanks so much. And I'm not sure anybody would ever call me a critical thinker. I like pondering better. I think that absolutely is what America needs right now, is a lot more pondering about the decisions we're making and even our personal interactions with each other, which is what I hope we get to here
Definitely.
pretty soon. But just a little bit on my background. I'm a Florida native. I actually live in the house that my grandparents had. We're fifth generation in Putnam County. And my family goes way back, being civically engaged. And I've grown up with stories. And in the 90s, my wife and I had a wonderful opportunity for her to take advantage of an opportunity to become a nurse practitioner. But we had 3 small kids and had a business, so we decided to sell the business, and I'd stay home with the kids. And what that did was put me on track to be in the schools a lot. And over the course of 10 years of being a very active volunteer and in the schools, there were a lot of decisions being made that I just didn't think were in the best interest of not only my children, but the children of Putnam County. And that led me to be an advocate at a school board meeting. And I'll never forget the first one I showed up. My knees were knocking, my voice was cracking, and you're just uncertain because you are when you haven't done something. It's hard to step outside your comfort zone, but you did it because you have a strong belief. I had a courage of my conviction, even though I had a cracked voice. So I showed up, and as I became more and more engaged, I educated myself more, and one of the board members challenged me if I didn't like the way things were, I should run for office. And not having been a critical thinker up to that time, I went home and pondered on that, and I thought, that's a great idea. And lo and behold, I was fortunate enough that people elected me to the board, and I think they liked my advocacy, because after one short term and very little experience in education, I decided to run for superintendent because I did not like the direction that we were going, and thought at least I would have a platform to point out the issues that I saw. Well, lo and behold, I won, and a little bit like the dog that caught the car, now what do you do? Well, we did exactly what we said we believed in, and the residents of Putnam County, I think, decided that was more change than they were willing to stick with, and they made a change after one term. However, many of the things that we put in place, and this is what I think politics is for, has moved our county forward. I mean, they're still there today, and I'm quite proud of that. But then, shortly after that, my political career, I thought, was over with the arrival of a grandbaby, and that will certainly change your focus if anybody hasn't had a grandchild. And since then, I've been blessed to have 2 more, and really living what I would call the good life of helping out my children where I could, watching the grandchildren, having that influence, passing on your values in that personal way. But lo and behold, Donald Trump came along, and he kind of changed my world. And I watched a community and a nation start accepting things that they never did. And I had to think about, well, what's my role? And my silence certainly was not the right role for me if I had any hope of changing the direction. And so here I am on Ponderings and Palm Coast, all the way from Putnam, and thrilled to talk about how we can work together as a, not only as a nation, but as a state and as a community. But that's going to take some reflection and some conversation and some accountability and patience and tolerance.
Absolutely.
And it's tough.
Oh,
It's tough.
And it's challenging, especially in the area we're in.
Right.
I have to remind myself and others to realize and not forget. For me, we're in Flagler County, and I'm sure Putnam is just as conservative and has been for a while in decisions made and how to participate. And I never again want to find myself after a general election or any election that I can have an involvement with and wish I should have done more. I should have said more. Right. I should have participated, which is part of why I started this podcast, was to give a voice to people, just general people. And you guys have seen throughout the episodes that I brought in, a lot of them have nothing to do with politics. And they're dealing with the library, or we're working to bring several speakers to come in for the Humane Society, which is a really big issue of putting forward thoughts and understandings and ideas, critical thinking, pondering, to let people know, because I do believe the success of our country, our state, our county, our city is going to fall on the residents and the citizens of that city. Whether it's donating for things that are going to be no longer funded by the federal government or the state government. Here in Palm Coast, we are facing a huge budget deficit because we have to rebuild and replace our water system. $500 million. The city doesn't have the money. The citizens don't have the money. The state has said, we can't help you. And certainly the administration in Washington isn't going to help them. And I believe this is a national thing that's going on. Whether you donate to hungry children through food pantry, whether you donate to the Humane Society for pets, I think that's where the citizens are going to need to step up. And so I offer a format to speak to that. But what I was so impressed with, and what I try to practice, is conversation of hard subject with individuals in our area that are not like-minded, and how to have that conversation. One of the number one questions that I get in my travels around when I talk to people are, how do I speak with a family member? How do I speak with a neighbor next door? How do I speak to others that are not like-minded? And many of them have run away, and they don't know how to do it. And it becomes bitter and controversial and anger, and you're throwing ideas at each other, and it never works. And so in the last meeting that I had with you, which is on the other podcast, our sister podcast, Conversations in American Democracy, I was very impressed with your presence and your view of having a very serious, deep conversation, but not driving the other person to run away or to get a chance to listen, because I think that's the trick. And that's what we need today. So how did you develop that? Is that just something that came natural to you as a Southern boy?
Well, at a time, but no, I would say I was one of the ones that ran away. When Donald Trump came in and some of the things that he'd said, just his rhetoric, I found at times so offensive, and I projected that onto many people that think, how could you be with him? And I kind of ran away and isolated myself. So I don't think any of us are different in that aspect.
Right.
It's just a matter of how you look at it. But as things got, for me, as things got worse, I reflected more about me and my willingness to be argumentative, and then think about how little impact I was having other than expressing frustration. And now, for me, things have gotten so serious that I really looked inward. And what I believe is that if you truly have the courage of your convictions, there's an obligation to share that in a way that it's received. So that's kind of how I try and look at it. And so someone who certainly will owe to the fact of how many times I have failed in the past, what I'm finding is that when I really engage individuals, and timing's a big part of that. Not everybody's ready to hear you just because you have something to say. But when I really started engaging them and listening, I asked more questions probably than I gave more answers.
That's a good trick. Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's sincere. So if you, I mean, we can
Well,
take it. We can take any number of issues today, from immigration to immigration is a big one that's going to affect us. I think the way we're going about it is absolutely detrimental to America's economy, to our culture, across the board. That doesn't mean that I don't want a secure border.
Exactly.
You know?
And I've talked about those two issues got thrown together. But when you have a conversation and you divide them, and I did this on an earlier podcast, we all want control of safety and environment of all peoples in the country. But we also do want a secure border. Nobody doesn't want that. And dividing and listening and having that conversation, I found helps maybe diffuse.
Well, it's just blaming. I mean,
exactly.
so I mean, even our side, I think will blame the other. Like if we had funded the judges and if you know, and well, those things didn't happen. You know what I mean? So we can argue about that being the cause, but I think at some point you have to accept the fact that we didn't deliver a message that people got behind to support that. We jump to today. I can't find an individual who is for Donald Trump and his immigration tactics that thinks it's good to separate a family and not tell them where they have gone. I've asked many, please explain that to me. The best answer I've got, well, it's complicated. It's not complicated. This isn't law. This is a culture that we are becoming that says we can justify something as abhorrent as taking an individual without their family knowing, sending them somewhere where they don't know where they're going and don't know why they got them. There's nothing in our law that says to do that. That's a choice that we've embraced and justified because there's this perception that these people have created a disproportionate disadvantage to us when factually it's just the opposite is true.
Sure. That's your first.
Yeah.
That's your first suggestion. Ask a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
Because you will find many don't even understand why.
Right.
They're angry, and when they say it out loud and they admit that the USAID monetary caused the death of millions in Africa, when they say it out loud, when they hear themselves, like with the immigration, some, if not most, will pause.
My experience has been they are, and that's what do you do? I mean, if you're truly trying to have a conversation with somebody, do you pounce on that point and say, "See, I'm right. You can't answer that"?
That would be.
It's the easiest thing to do. You know, you've got them on the ropes. Go. But I don't believe it's the most effective.
It is definitely not.
And we're not thinking of each other that we have different perspectives. I do have lines like everybody. I have lines that if you cross, I'm sorry. I'm just not going to associate with that. I'm not going to tolerate that. That doesn't mean we're going to necessarily have to debate that, but I would like you to own it. But I do think citizens are a little bit different in those that we elect. And we talk about how to make the difference. For me, I think it's actually engaging those at a local level and finding out, because we do vote for our friends or people that are known or that we've done business with in the community. And seldom do we get down to what do you really believe. You know, we hear, I don't know about here in Flagler, but certainly in Putnam, we'll be lucky. We'll have 4 or 5 forums where candidates speak for 3 minutes, and you're supposed to make this assumption. So, you know, I've taken the tact of actually engaging my commissioners and city commissioners and starting to write to them on a regular basis. And at first, I have to tell you, I was very disappointed. They're not communicating with me. They're not doing this. And then I said, well, wait a minute. Now, I've been in a position before. What's this like? And the truth is, it's hard to stay engaged when someone dismisses you if you tend to look at that. But at the same time, if it's important enough for you to engage that one time, is it important enough a second or a third? And what I'm finding out after the 3rd or 4th time, I'm getting responses, because no one wants to be that representative that doesn't respond to their constituents.
Sure.
So,
now you are a member of the Putnam. You're the co-chair of the Putnam.
I'm the vice chair.
You're the vice chair of the DEC in Putnam
Absolutely.
County. And I'm finding, and I'm trying to do the things you're describing, but also to put numbers behind it. If I can get myself to communicate to a city administrator, a city councilman, that's great.
Right.
But if I can get 20
Sure.
like-minded people, and I have seen transitional changes based on participation just in our own city council. So it does matter, and it does help. And mobilizing those people that are like-minded and agree to do that, to get that done.
Well,
and you've had some success with that
I think
the county level.
I'm a proud Democrat in a county. I think it's the county that voted the most for Donald Trump. I think 70% voted for Donald Trump. So, and you mentioned this earlier, or we were talking, I think maybe before the podcast, that, you know, how do you connect with those people? What are those commonalities that will open that up? Well, the Putnam County Democrats, we've got a little motto. We say, Putnam over party. This is where we live. And now all of a sudden that's framed the conversation. So when I asked my commissioner to please explain me why letting the Obama tax credits expire without anybody saying a word, and I point out the fact it could be as much as a $65 million annual loss to our county. Absolutely. Not to mention the 8,000 people who may not have health insurance anymore, and the impacts that may have on the hospital or on Azalea Health Care, and that we're one of the poorest, if not the poorest community in the state. And yet they're still silent, our county commissioners. They've had many opportunities to deal with this. You don't quit. The city picked it up and actually passed a resolution stating that. And we've had more conversation now in our town about this, and no one denies it's a huge problem. But for whatever reason, well, not the reason, I think the reason is that 70% of the county voted for Donald Trump, and he wants it to go away. So the Republican leadership, which all our county leadership has decided to remain silent. I can't imagine a politician thinking that being silent about something so economically and health damaging to your community is good for politics. But yet that's the world we find ourselves in now. So I don't blame them. I think a lot of it comes from a lack of understanding, not knowing what to say, and how it really comes down to a question of what do you care more about, the people you represent or where it is you're going. I don't know, because certainly, and I asked them at a meeting, tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm quite open to maybe I am wrong, but I haven't heard anybody tell me yet.
Exactly. Now, and if you're to clarify, so a lot of people don't understand the structures or the format. Palatka, the city that you're talking
Yes.
about, the city council members are nonpartisan,
They are.
as they are here in Palm Coast. They run as a nonpartisan. Where it becomes partisan, Republican and Democrat, is when we reach to the county level of the
Right.
commissioners. And I have found that they use that as a coat. I was recently at an open town hall with a city council member and was talking about the impact of the last 10 years, Florida, Flagler, and in Putnam has been driven by fiscal conservatism, and yet they all complain, down to a man, how they have no money, they're in debt, people are struggling, people can't buy a home. I mean, there's a plethora of things, and I was attempting to shine a light, a mirror, on this elected official to go, do you not own the decisions of previous elected officials in today's efforts that you guys are constantly, home rule, is
Right.
one of the biggest things that we struggle here. We elect people that go to Tallahassee and then take away all the laws of our city and county, and then they turn around and complain about it, and they're all conservative Republicans. And his response to me was, well, I was elected in a nonpartisan position at the city council. That's for people above me. For 8 years, he was a commissioner
Yeah.
for the county. So, holding a light.
Yeah,
And you've been doing a great job at that.
well, thanks. I'm trying, but I would even say, and you mentioned the Palatka City Council, it may be nonpartisan, but it is predominantly Democrat, which is it's kind of eye-opening. So when you take away those labels, who do people vote for? And I think that's kind of where we are. We're electing leaders that aren't actually leading; they're following. But that's on us. Well, that's up to the citizens for us to have that interaction. And for me, I guess having been part of education administration, I think one of the most important things if you really want to learn or teach something is relevancy.
And that's nonpartisan as well, right?
That's-
School boards here are
Right.
supposed to be.
Supposedly nonpartisan. and our school board's a mix of I don't know what the mix is, but I know there's a mix of Republicans and Democrats. And that's a good thing. But I really think when you bring it back, I mean, our whole country was based on individual rights. I mean, the closer you bring it to home, to me, the more American we are. And I think that's the place is why would we want to elect individuals who aren't willing to express their opinions? And we find that we do that a lot because of the contradictions in who they support. That doesn't make them good or bad. It just makes some people that decide to take a leadership role, I think, more for the paycheck than for the progress. But people can do that. That's America.
Yeah, no,
you know?
I agree. But my experience here in Flagler is that the commitment, the loyalty. Again, I have attempted numerous times, Perry, to invite you to come. He's the REC chair, great guy. We've had awesome conversations, and I want to have a dialogue, and he's not willing for a variety of reasons to come and sit, most of which is they're winning.
So
They're the majority. Why should he put himself in a position to try to defend the decisions that are being made? And until that number, and unfortunately in Palm Coast and in Flagler County, it's all Republicans. I think we have one sitting elected official in our school board who was elected at being very clearly a Democrat. And I don't believe in the health of a county or a city, the partisan divide needs to be that great to be successful. What is critically important in the horizon, the federal elected officials, House and Senate, have chosen, and I heard it again by Senator Langston on Face the Nation yesterday morning when asked by the reporter, the interviewer, what are you going to do about the ACA credits? And he said, we do not plan on extending those credits due to, they were because of COVID, during a terrible time in our culture and in our country, and we no longer see the value of funding healthcare when we're so far in debt. And I almost choked on it because we're in debt for a variety of reasons, most of which from our conservative elected officials. But here's the real world, and this is what Tom woke me up to and what I've been pursuing, which is real. It's going to touch people. It's going to impact our county, your county. In Flagler County, there's 44,000 people that use the ACA. And to describe the ACA very simply, the Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, it is a health care availability for people that make more than the Medicaid guidelines, but aren't eligible for Social Security or Medicare, and work for companies, and here's the catch, work for companies that don't offer health care. And those are smaller companies, which, as you've shared, Putnam County has the majority of small companies. So take your favorite pizza place, take your favorite dry cleaners, take any of these small.
Your air conditioning man.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to do
your
it
air
without
conditioner
him.
man, your groundskeeper, the guy cutting your grass, that applies and gets on the ACA. There is a required copay premium that they have to pay each month for every person on it. And I posted on my Facebook page an article that was put out, and Flagler Live's done it now. It's becoming a conversation. The Observer is talking about now, that's talking about a family of 4 are going to go from somewhere around $500 a month. That's not for the health care, that's to have the health care, to over $1,000 a month to have health care. And what we know is going to happen, they're just not going to have health care.
Right.
And what will happen to the hospitals?
That's just one of the consequences, not having health care. The other is absenteeism from work, absenteeism from school. It's the hospital not getting reimbursed. It's doctors not having the pool of people. We already have a difficult time getting appointments like we would like. So, again, it comes back to simple questions. How does this make Putnam better? It doesn't. And you referenced the Senator Langford talking about in time with the debt.
Right.
Well, with all they just did, they just added $4 trillion to the debt. Yeah. So, it's just a cacophony of contradiction when it comes from their side. But the challenge is how do we speak to one another, and I'm talking about Republicans to Democrats. To your point of reaching out, one of our commissioners, Larry Harvey, who is the chair of the Republican Party, I've done the same thing. I've talked with the local paper, who's very interested in having a counterpoint on a issue local to Putnam. And Larry Harvey's response was, well, his plate's kind of full right now. Well, I bet it is full when you don't have an answer for many of the things that are affecting your constituents. It's smart for him politically to duck and cover. I get that. However, he has every advantage to promote what he believes in and what he thinks is best, and this would only amplify that. And I think ultimately that's what everybody's job is to amplify the voices so that we can make a sound decision. And that's what I'm trying to do in the conversations I'm having both privately with citizens and publicly. Is, well, let me help. If you actually believe separating families is good, I'd love to put your name to that and tell people you believe that.
Absolutely.
When they're like, wait, that's not really what I said. Well, it is what you said. You said this was acceptable. And I'm not trying to put them on the spot, but people ought to have credit for what they believe. And I certainly, I hope people will tag me with the things I believe. It's how we make this great country of ours greater. When they put "Make America Great Again," I don't know what "again" means to me. It certainly seems to be that white males have more control than anyone else, or certainly people with money. That's not my idea of great, but I can respect that if that's it. But I want you to say it.
Absolutely.
Just tell me, put your name to it, that this is what I believe. And I think that's what we're running into, and that's why there's such a focus on our president, because he will go and say those things, and it creates a cover for others. I didn't say that. One of his favorite things is, that's what other people are saying. Well, what I'm saying is, I think the decisions that are being made at a national and state level are bad for Putnam County. And my name is Tom Townsend, and I articulate those points and why that is. And usually it comes around economics and health.
Right. So I want everybody to capture that second element of the conversation. Give the people you're talking to an opportunity to realize they need to own their comments and beliefs.
I think so, absolutely.
I'm learning from you, Tom. I'm trying to pick and choose and to let our listeners who are challenged right now in their dealings with people around them that don't see things. So I didn't want to miss that opportunity, that when people are defending their whatever and they're saying and they believe in this, that, and the other, which they wholeheartedly do, allow them to own that.
Well, DEI is to me at the core of all of this.
Oh.
I believe that diversity is a good thing. I believe equality is a good thing. I think inclusion is a good thing. But in this time of labeling things as being bad, but you can't find a Republican who will tell you diversity is bad. Yet we got to punish anybody that has a policy that wants more diversity or more equality or more inclusion. But yet you can't say those things are bad. I don't know what it's like to be that mixed up. I really don't. But I do feel for them. And that's why I would like to try and have a conversation that says, help me understand. Help me understand how not providing opportunity for people who've never had it before through policy is a bad thing. I do believe in merit and competition and all of that. But that's why we have referees, right? You want to keep things fair. Is it fair for someone like me who's come from a family that's been in the same community for generations, has a house that was blessed, that was given to me, that was able to go to school, that had every advantage that this society had? Is it fair for me to have that and that recognition, that advantage, and put me next to somebody else that may not even get an interview because they're not known? I don't think that's fair. I don't think that makes me better at the job if I am to get it. And there is this fear that I don't think people have identified, that something's being taken away from them.
Right.
And that's not what's happening. Something is being given to our neighbors to give them an equal chance. And I'm proud. I jokingly say they've replaced DEI with DAI. They don't want diversity, equity and inclusion, so they replace it with a dumbass idea. And I don't get it. And when I ask them about it, they just say it. But we're literally now living in a time where you see people getting fired for Facebook postings. You talked about free speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, earlier. Well, free speech has consequences. And I certainly understand someone not being associated with something. I don't believe there's much equity in the way this is being applied. But that's what happens. That's why elections are so important, because we get to actually represent the people that get to imprint on us their idea of equity and diversity and inclusion. And I don't like what's being imprinted these days, and that's why I'm out trying to do what I can.
You know, you remind me, I did an experiment recently. My wife's a big thrifter, so on the weekend sometimes we'll make a day of it and we'll go to we've been to Putnam, Palatka. Recently we were in Sanford and we're looking in these bins, and it isn't my thing. She could be in there for 8 hours and I'm telling the owner, you need a husband's seat over here where I can sit on my phone. But she came up and she handed me this red hat. And I looked at it and go, why are you giving me this red hat? And I looked at it and it said on the front and embroidered, it says, America is great.
Yeah.
And it was $1. I grabbed it because I thought, what better way to message the failure of a message? So I do a lot of the shopping, and we go to Walmart because we can't afford Publix and other places. My dollar's worth $1. And I was wearing that hat. And I was walking through Publix, and I'm shopping and whatever, and a gentleman, older gentleman, walks up and taps me on my back and says, hey, glad you're so proud. Thanks for wearing it. I turned around and he read it, and his whole manner changed. And he looked at me and he insinuated that I must have been lost because I'm a white, older gentleman that isn't following the guidelines of us white, older men. And I smiled at him and I said, isn't it amazing what just a hat will do in America today? A hat.
Right.
A red hat brings about, and I tried to have. I took the hat off and I said, hey, you have a moment? I'd love to talk to you. Did not want to talk about it. The other reaction I had, which was really powerful, we have a forum, which you and I have talked about on Fridays, open forum. Everybody's invited. You don't have to be a registered anything. We come in and we discuss things that are happening. Sometimes it's pretty powerful. Some people are really concerned and worried and whatever. And we were in the forum, and it was my turn to speak, and I had the red hat. I'm in a room full of liberals, basically, and I put it on, and I went, how do you feel? And there was the expected response to the hat. But what was the most powerful takeaway for me? There was a young black lady who is very powerful, and she has opened up some great conversations that looked at me, and out of nowhere she goes, so exactly when was America great for me? And it was a powerful message of one of the things we struggle with in our own liberal democratic view of how do we embrace everyone? How do we bring the black and brown community, which I know over in Putnam is a very big group. The Hispanic community and the black community is huge. And I thanked her for her comment, and I've talked to her many times since then. But we can't assume that we understand the feelings and views or issues that other people have. But what I love about the Democratic Party, what I love and hope about the liberals, for me, we're willing to listen. We want to understand. We want to bring you in and embrace your issues. There's never, it's getting challenging, but there's never a, I hate, I don't like this group, I don't want this group. So your thoughts on that?
Well, I hear you, but I think certainly we have some of that on our own side.
And we have to own that,
We have
for
to
sure.
own that. And I think as we've isolated more and talked to each other, we become more comfortable in those things, saying things that we wouldn't if the person was sitting right next to us. And I've consciously am working to stop that. But I think we need to also not be timid in our asking questions and paying attention to what's happening. You know, with the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk. We just step back a little bit and think about all the things that are going on, because they do tie it together. Not being able to have a memorial at Pulse nightclub because let's get real, it offends people, or some people are offended. Well, if you don't think, can you imagine being a victim of that? Same as being Charlie Kirk and his family, a victim. Of course, people that are victimized like that should be honored and memorialized. Doesn't mean you have to agree with their lifestyles or their rhetoric, but nobody deserves that.
Absolutely.
Yet, here we are, we just passed, or the Supreme Court just said, we can open carry now in Florida. And sheriffs across our state, including our own, are touting how they're for that, that's the man, but they're even implying that they like that. And then they give the caveat, which I really like, is, but you still can't carry a gun to the sheriff's office.
Or a school, or a church.
Or a government. So there's a whole lot of people that are worth protecting. But there's a whole lot that for some reason don't get that same protection. Right. And I think it's I don't have the answer to that. I want to know why that is. If my community is made safer, why do I, as a grandfather who want to take my grandchild to the playground, have to now accept the fact that somebody can be there with an assault rifle on their arm? Now, if I go to the school, that can't happen. I don't understand the difference. Why should one be intimidated? I mean, I don't think it should be allowed either.
Right.
But it is allowed at one. So there are lots of places where children and people gather. Can't take one to a football game, right? But there's
sure they do.
But there's lots of places you can. Well, I think we need to ask those questions. I don't think that's radical. Explain to me why that's good.
Right.
Well, and the answer you get, well, it's the Second Amendment. Well, how can you adjust the Second Amendment for these things that you care about and not those? The amount of money that we're spending on protection for our officials. You know, how much do we spend on the average person? I don't know. I think these are questions we ought to be asking. How do we spend that money to secure everybody's safety? What makes you more important? Is it speaking out? Well, I'm speaking out now. There's nobody's going to be asking for me to pay for my protection.
It's funny you bring that up, because my wife was saying to me after this, do you feel safe? Do I feel safe that I am being public about my views? And I jokingly said to her, no, but I feel safe, but maybe I can get part of that $58 million of security that they're trying to pass to protect our elected officials. I doubt they're going to care too much.
But it's a real question. And the truth is, I'm not in fear, but I do feel less safe.
Well,
I mean, that's just it. So where is the line? And that's what everybody has to ask themselves on all the issues. For their line, not our presidents or our representative or, my representative's Congressman Fine. He's gone way over my line. I personally cannot support somebody that would flippantly talk about starving children as an accepted way to the Absolutely.
He prides himself on shock value comments. It's become his method of maintaining visibility.
And the truth is, me even mentioning that kind of exaggerates it and keeps it going. It's not, it's
Right.
kind of a mistake, but it is part of the dialogue that we need to have. Are there comments that are unacceptable from elected officials? Certainly are. If you're a teacher or a professor or a reporter, there's a
Right.
whole lot we have no problems. But if you're the leader, or one of the leaders of the free world in Congress, apparently there's no limit to what you can say. But that again comes back to us. Randy Fine's just a product of our acceptance.
So, Tom, if I were sitting across from you and I was a mainstream, not a MAGA, but a mainstream conservative that had voted conservative, voted Republicans for a while, how would you, what would be that dialogue? What kind of things would you start off the conversation to find out kind of where my views were? I know you've talked about starving children or separating, and because there has to be an opening, a starting point when they go, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm a Republican, and
I try to not bring up things that I don't think I have a better solution for.
okay.
So it's real easy to talk about what's not right, but it's much harder to come up with something that is better. We mentioned immigration before. I think we all agree we want a safe, secure border.
Absolutely.
But why wouldn't we let those employers right now who have undocumented workers, why not let them sponsor them? We know we have working, productive people that aren't costing us anything, and start getting these people registered. We're all after the semantics of seeing if there's something wrong on a form. Now we got a reason to get rid of them. But it makes absolutely no sense, or no one's explained to me how removing somebody that's actually producing, paying taxes, and putting him in alligator Alcatraz at $55,000 a year or whatever ridiculous amount that cost, how is that good for anyone? And so I that's how I start, is with, I don't think we're doing this right. This is what I think. Do you have a better idea?
But they broke the law, Tom. They're here illegally.
They did. They absolutely did. And people break the law every day. And I don't want to pay $55,000 a year for people with misdemeanors when they were actually producing, not causing harm, and paying taxes. Now, do I want to get them registered? I absolutely do. And I think there's an easy way to do it. However, so is that employer breaking the law. Okay? I don't want as we continue to be divided by our president, I don't want my community turning on people who are trying to make a living, who are employing people, who aren't doing anything wrong other than producing, and saying, nope, you broke the law. But that's where equity comes in.
Right.
It's not something that our current administration's interested in. They want more equal. They don't want equal. And so I don't think it does any good to complain about that. And I also think we spend too much time trying to convince others. There are more of us that believe like we do. We just don't vote.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
I use that number all the time too.
And so I think really the efforts are no longer need to be directed at those individuals that are absolutely opposed or don't want to engage. Now, with the exception being your elected officials, I just think they swore an oath.
Sure.
To engage them. But I think the engagement needs to come to others. And I think that's a much easier conversation to talk about. How do you feel about what's going on here with someone who hasn't voted, and get to the importance of voting? And I think that's going to be, if we have a strategy, it's going to be the strategy
Right.
that will take us over the top. You don't have to have someone tell you that inflation is real. Okay? You just have to find somebody that went to the grocery store. We make this a lot harder than it is. Yeah, there's not anybody that thinks shooting someone is wrong. Okay? I don't think there's very many that think that a background check for these weapons is wrong. But for whatever reason, we've allowed this labeling and this fear of having something taken from us instead of the comfort of having safety, knowing that these people who are ill can't get their hands on weapons. It's a baby step as far as I'm concerned.
How would you respond if you're in a conversation like I have had recently where they cherry pick events, subjects, actions that occur that they like, and they push aside all the other stuff as, I don't care about the ACA because I'm retired and I have Social Security or Medicare or just it amazes me and it challenges me to understand when I'm having a conversation with someone of a different view that they tend to, and you nailed it earlier talking about their ability to focus on just one or two things and not take any ownership of all the other things. They just don't want to. How do you deal with that?
Well, I don't. I move on. You make your statement, move on. Quite often now I'll change the subject, but I really think, because I do think this is serious, and I think we have to win or we're going to be in big trouble. But I think and we're really talking about the strategy to win.
Right.
It's not the combative. And when you reference that, I don't know about you, but in my experience, most of the conversations go on with people like me who have more time on their hands, watch it, and enjoy the debate. That's not who America is. Most of America is actually out working and raising children and going to school and trying to figure out how to pay rent, and actually are tired when they get home and don't want to have an intense conversation about that.
Yep.
But you find them where they are and ask them how it is. Are you doing better? Is it more of a struggle? Are you able to afford your child care? Talk about the things that are really relevant to me. It's not that the violence and all that isn't relevant to them. It's just not what they're living. We all hate the wars that are going on around the world, but we're not that much affected by them other than what we choose to be, whether it be empathetic or to donate to the Red Cross or whatever that is. It's not changing our daily life, but our daily life is changing right before us.
Absolutely.
And not only across all spectrums, and it really is. It is in my view, it's a culture war, and a culture war that many thought that the left had gone too far in what they were trying. I don't agree with them, but I think they believed that and feared, and now they've rolled this into, like I say, not being able to have a memorial at the Pulse nightclub where 50 people were shot down for what? No. And it makes absolutely no sense. But I don't think they're realizing it.
I think for me, and I try to practice this, is I have enough or a deep enough dive conversation with whoever I'm talking to. If they're willing to give me a few moments, my goal is to try to learn enough to where I can show them how they are or could possibly be touched tomorrow, next week, by decisions that are being made that they don't know about. And before talking with you, I had no idea of the connection with Obamacare and the ACA and the January actions of the credits. And I'm pretty on top of it. I watch my share of news, both sides. Drives my wife nuts when she comes home and I'm watching Fox News, the 5 or whatever, and she's you say you're MAGA, you're done. She has no energy for you. And I respect that. But for me, I cannot have a dialogue if I don't know where you're coming from or what you're hearing or how you're hearing it. And yet I had no idea.
I had a young man I was speaking to the other day, I would guess about 30, had health insurance for the first time through ACA, and so excited about that. I said, well, you know that premium, what are you paying? I think he was paying $140 something a month. So you know that premium's going to probably go up to about $900. He says, well, I can't have that. He says, I just got this. Well, he has
Right.
no idea. Someone didn't vote.
Oh, he just,
So
Yeah.
I mean, that's my point. I think that's how we have to talk to people, is ask them about those very things that are actually relevant. They will tell you if you just engage them.
Right.
They'll tell you what's relevant and the decisions being made. There's not anybody arguing out there that tariffs are good. They're making excuses for why it is, but it's simple. I'm not saying it's not a tool that can't be used appropriately, but this just broad swipe of, I will punish you, I will show that. Well, like it or not, we are a global economy.
right.
I mean, we just are. And why would you not want to develop another market or another country? I mean, that is how you strengthen it. So I, quite honestly, don't understand the philosophy that they can't explain. But they do have the power. And you don't have to look any further than the tax breaks that in the big ugly bill that they passed is the rich tax breaks are permanent, and everybody else is just till 28. Well, don't you think that's so the next one can come in and say,
Right.
I'm going to extend this for you, or I'm going to do that. But let's go ahead and take the rich people and get them in our pocket. You got all the money you want. And, they're doing it right in front of our faces. I mean, it's not like there's no secret cabal going on here. They're doing they're blackmailing
Sure.
right in front of everybody. So that is the culture war. Is that who we're going to be? And it's kind of ironic for particularly so many on the right to evoke Christ's name, yet I still can't explain it to me. I'm a lost soul. I need to understand how we can treat our brothers and sisters like this current administration and tout how much how spiritual we are. It's just something I'm not able to comprehend, nor am I able to find anybody to explain it to me.
Yeah, and that, man, Tom, we could do this for a day, I think. It's amazing. But you've brought out some suggestions, some methods that I think we all need to embrace so that we can win, so that we can change the elected officials that make the decisions that empower these beliefs. Somebody has a thought, and then the thought becomes an idea, and then the idea becomes something as a bill that gets pushed in. Then all of a sudden, we have just some of the insanity that's going on out of our state and federal. And for me, I know that it's working. I know that people are hearing because of the actions of the conservatives. I was recently talking to someone that went to a REC meeting as a guest. I don't know how they let her in because she's a registered Democrat. And she came back and said, they're pushing mail-in ballots in Flagler County.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Donald Trump says mail-in ballots are the devil and terrible. But they know they need to reach out to everybody that can vote. The redistricting, that's an example of the National Conservative Party, the group, fearful of the midterms enough to where they're spending millions of dollars to get 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 5 seats, which I don't think is going to help them. Honestly,
Right.
we flipped 42 about, don't quote me, check it on your own. I always give you guys homework, you know that. In the 2018 after Trump's was elected. And so his biggest fear is losing the House and the Senate, which is what happened in his last term, which is a start towards putting those roadblocks.
Well, I certainly hope we do that. But you asked many, and I'd like to say this to anyone that's listening. It is going to be up to individual Americans. And I think we tend to look for someone else to go out there and be that voice or be that message. But wherever you are, wherever you sit today, there is somebody in your life. It may be your neighbor or somebody in the family. You don't have to go talk to 100 people. Find a way to engage one and ask them. If you're not sure, then ask them the question. Are you good with what's going on? You know, point out the things that you are bothered by and ask them to help you rectify that. That's how these conversations begin. And through those conversations, people will rise up. And it is time for each one of us, I believe, to rise on what you believe. It is the silence condones. When you sit in a room of 10 people and somebody's saying something's just outrageous, you don't have to make a scene, but you can certainly make it clear that I'm sorry, but this is something that's really crossed my line. I'd rather not speak about this anymore. That courage, that strength alone changes things. I'll never forget one day when I was a kid, a man came, my father, after playing golf, and they were in the living room, and he was just talking. They're good friends. Anyway, he decided to use the N-word in his storytelling. And my mother was so offended, and she just said, "Stop. There's a whole world out there where anybody can talk like they want. This is my home. This is not accepted, and you're always welcome here, assuming you understand what the rules are." And I'll never forget that as a 9-year-old boy thinking, man, who's this talking to this man like that? Well, it's just she had the courage of her convictions, and it's a real lesson. And I think we're looking at other people that they are the problem. I would suggest that we aren't the problem, but we certainly have the ability within us to change this narrative, but it can't be done through silence.
Exactly.
Anyway, I want to thank you very much for
and
having
I always
me.
am every conversation that I have with everybody. We are Americans.
We are.
Black, white, brown, documented, undocumented. You come to this country, you participate, you pay your taxes, you raise your kids, legal or not legal, you're an American. We will all, and I love to say this, we're all in the same boat, Tom.
We're all in the same
And
boat.
if we're not rowing together, we're rowing in a circle, not going anywhere. So, Tom, so good to finally get you over here. And
it's an
I am
honor. I appreciate it.
excited to follow and have you back over the next 6 or 8 months. I think it's a critical time. And as you pointed out, today, make that effort. Today, reach out to that neighbor, that friend, that coworker, and ask them. And I love what you said. Are you okay with what's happening today? Are you right with whether it's religious comments or medical comments or decisions? Don't be afraid to be heard, because it takes that one conversation. Any lasting thoughts, Tom, before we wrap this?
Just a pleasure. I'm very optimistic. I think we are, and when I say we, Americans in general, I don't think this is going to be Democrats. I think there's people across the board. But we have to think of our associations. And you can't lend your credibility to a movement you don't believe in and not be associated with it. And unfortunately, I think there are many Republicans that I know, they tell me, don't really like what's going on. Yet they stay with that party. They lend their credibility. And that's what I think ultimately is who you're going to lend your credibility to. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate it. And together, we're going to make a difference.
Well, I think, if I touch one person and I get that one person to ponder the things that are going on, and that does fit in this case. And remember, guys, there are clubs, groups, societies, caucuses, everywhere where you live, where you can find groups that will help you. They're organized. 5051, I've done Indivisible. I've done great episodes in which we give you options to participate. Don't just sit this one out. It's just too big. It's too important. And I think Tom has pointed out some huge tools for you to be successful. So with that, I'll catch you next time. You guys stay safe. Bye.
God bless America.
God bless America.